Canada Post workers across the country have been on strike for almost 3 weeks. The union says they have presented mediators with revised proposals in hopes of returning to the bargaining table. And Canada Post says they are reviewing those proposals. As for Canadians, according to a new poll from the Angus Reid Institute, only 21% say the labour dispute is impacting the mail they are waiting for or have sent, while 47% said the strike is having a slight impact on them, and 32% said they haven't been impacted at all. But for some, this postal strike is having a huge impact. The Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami is raising concerns about the disproportionate effect on Inuit and northern communities. In a letter to the federal ministers today, the ITK is calling for them to do everything possible to bring this situation to a timely resolution. Natan Obed is the president of the ITK, and he joins me now. Thanks for coming in.
Happy to be here.
So I want to bring you in to talk about this Canada Post strike, and I want to get your perspective on the impact it's having on northern communities. Give us a sense of what impact this is having on places that you know well.
Yeah, well, ITK represents the 51 Inuit Nunangat communities, and all of which are entirely dependent upon Canada Post for parcels and for letter mail, and we don't have other options. UPS, FedEx, Purelator, all of these services, if they're available at all, they flow through Canada Post and arrangements with Canada Post. So we're effectively cut off from all parcels in and out of Inuit Nunangat. And our communities depend upon this service because we also don't have roads. 49 of our 51 communities are only accessible by plane this time of year. So if you have a medical issue that's ongoing and you need constant resupply of things like insulin, Canada Post was usually the delivery agent for that. For checks, a lot of our elders don't have bank accounts still. Many of our elders are still unilingual and aren't online. There's no way for them to get their elders' benefits. So we're seeing a cascading effect of this Canada Post strike interrupting an essential service to our communities. And it's really difficult.
Yeah, it seems to me like the post office, as you're saying, is really a lifeline for a lot of northern communities. You mentioned drugs. A lot of places don't have a drugstore, right? So they get pharmaceuticals through the mail. A lot of folks who need diapers, they're so prohibitively expensive in some places, so they order them from retailers down here in the south to get them delivered by mail, right? You know, often getting bulk purchases of some of these things, and as those start to run out, people start to get concerned. Maybe just speak a bit to how this is not just a minor inconvenience, as it might be for some people here in Southern Ontario, for example. This is really a critical issue for places that you represent.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think that Southern Canadians can really understand the remote nature of Inuit communities. Often I get asked, how long does it take to drive to your home community? And it takes 2 days by plane to get to my home community in Nunatziavut. There is no way for me to drive there. So there's just a lack of understanding, and I think that permeates also through to the political and also the union and Canada Post negotiating table. We need to really underscore here that this is an essential service, and without Canada Post, we literally have no way of moving goods and services through our communities in a timely and expedient fashion.
Yeah, you mentioned Nain, the north coast of Labrador, certainly a place that relies on Canada Post, right, as well. What are you hearing from people back home? What sort of stories are being passed on to you? Is there a concern that boys and girls, for example, will have their Christmas ruined because they're not going to get presents through the mail? Kind of speak to me about that human element. What are you hearing?
Well, individuals are having to take it on themselves. So anyone who travels south for medical appointments or for work is now tasked with a Christmas list. The cargo that goes between communities based on our northern airlines, they can service a little bit of the population, but it's expensive. It also, you need to be in a hub area to drop off a package. So we're trying to figure out ways in which to get essential items and also this upcoming holiday season, Christmas presents, back up to our communities. But it's not sustainable, and a lot of people are going to have to go without. Some people have even considered flying south, often at the cost of thousands of dollars, just to be able to get the essentials that they need, get the Christmas shopping they need done, so that their Christmas can be as positive as possible for their families.
Yeah, I was looking at the Canada Post annual report. There is 280 flights a week into northern and remote communities. Like, that's a lot of cargo that's moving every week, and that cargo, much of it now not moving right into some of the communities you're speaking about. That must have a huge dislocative effect on people. It's just quite remarkable. Do you think that if this was having such a big impact, say on major urban centers or suburban areas, that there would be more urgency to deal with this issue? I mean, obviously these communities are impacted, but when we're speaking about rural, remote, northern communities, the impact is massive, as we've just been discussing. Would there be more political pressure, do you think, to get this to an end?
Absolutely. Well, let's just take the business community. If you are a business owner that sells product to southern Canada and you live in Inuit Nunangat, you have no way to get your items to market now. There is no other option. If that was the case for Toronto businesses, this wouldn't happen. And if it happened, it would last less than 2 days. If there was any even sense that this could create a medical emergency within a particular community in this country, in an urban center, that would be national news, and it would dominate the political conversations within the House of Commons. Canada Post, sometimes in urban centers, is seen as one of many options to do business, to get something from one place to another. The essential services nature of Canada Post is still in its mandate, and it's something that I think more Canadians need to get on side with us to ensure that we can get a proper resolution to this strike.
Yeah, as you say, it is considered an essential service, which means the federal government could, in theory, order these people back to work and end this strike action and put those parties at a table to settle it all and actually come to some sort of resolution. Do you think it's time for Ottawa to step in more aggressively than they have to this point to bring this strike to an end?
Yes. ITK sent a letter to Ministers McKinnon and Duclos this morning asking for the immediate intervention an end to the strike. We don't want to prescribe how that happens. We just want the urgency from the federal government to ensure that this Crown Corporation doesn't leave us with no options in order to live sustainably in our homeland.
Yeah, because this is week 3, right? This is not just a couple days that we're into this strike. Steve McKinnon, yesterday, you mentioned him, said that there has been no material progress. The situation is, quote, still very difficult. What's your message to the corporation and the union and the government as they continue with this squabble?
Well, I want to point to a conversation that is a Canadian conversation about letters to Santa. And Santa's home is in the North Pole. He's in Inuit Nunangat. He's a celebrity visitor to our homeland. There's been lots of conversation about how to ensure that those letters from Canadian children get to Santa at the North Pole. We need the Government of Canada, Canada Post, and the union to all consider Inuit communities alongside with Santa. And it's interesting to me that so much more time and energy has been placed on that particular consideration than the essential needs of Inuit communities. So we just need some sort of intervention, and we need it quickly to ensure that a place in this country that has no other access can still continue to be sustainable in these winter months.
Just before I let you go, the government is poised to release its Arctic foreign policy sometime soon. It could come as early as this week. What are you hoping to see from Ottawa and Melanie Joly, the Foreign Affairs Minister, when she releases that document?
Well, we've been in close communication with Minister Joly and her team. We've co-developed large sections of the forthcoming Arctic foreign policy. We're hoping to see the introduction of an Arctic ambassador. We as Inuit hope to co-develop that particular consideration with this government. We also hope to see investment and consideration for Inuit participation in sovereignty, defense, and also the international outreach of Canada to the world. Inuit want to be partners within this. We are the reason why Canada can claim sovereignty over Inuit Nunangat, over the Arctic. And it's time now for us to play a more significant role in how Canada talks about itself, but also how Canada does its business with its global partners.
Okay, let's leave it there. Natan Obed, president of the ITK. Thanks for coming in.
Happy to be here again. Yeah.
Thank you.